Good morning, everybody. Firstly, thanks for making it earlier today, setting your alarm clocks up a little bit earlier than usual. I think we've got a great session for you to kick off today's conference. My name's Hitesh Bhatt. I'm the RVP for EMEA for Samba TV. For those of you not familiar with Samba, we are a TV data and analytics business. We capture viewing data from millions of smart TVs. Connected to our own device map, we can deliver cross-screen targeting, planning, and attribution capabilities. Right, before we launch into the panel, a very quick intro presentation from me, just to set the scene, really. So, yeah, TV is doing well. It's in a golden age at the moment. More shows, more platforms, more ways to engage audiences. I guess the challenge is also there's much more competition for program creators, for advertisers, to try and connect with these audiences across multiple screens, across multiple platforms. From an advertiser's point of view, there's a lot more complexity. A lot of questions arising around, how does my TV and my cross-screen video deliver ROI? How are they working together? How am I able to deliver effective cross-screen reach, cross-screen frequency? I think between us, we should be able to help you with a lot of these questions across the course of the panel. Just to kick off, really, so as I say, the golden age of TV, people are spending more time than ever with television. If you look at all adults, nearly 4.5 hours on average per day. Younger audiences, just over 3. The youngest audiences, just over an hour. However, a lot of that activity with the TV is not currently measured by the current kind of measurement systems. If you look at this, this is kind of what Barb call unknown viewing data. Anecdotally, this is things like SVOD viewing. It's playing video games on the TV. It's playing, watching YouTube on the TV. It's VOD beyond the 28-day VOD window. And it's a significant proportion of time. For all adults, nearly 20%. For young audiences, 36%. Even for kids, it's up to over 43% of time spent with the television is not currently measured. This is a real challenge for brands, for agencies to understand, what's going on with the significant proportion of time spent with the TV. And it's not changing anytime soon. Barb called it unknown audiences. At Samba, we've termed it elusive audiences. These are people that are harder to reach by traditional TV capabilities. And it's going to grow. We already have Netflix, we have Amazon Prime. They are taking up a lot more time, buying a lot more original content, creating stuff. But we now have some huge content creators moving into the kind of direct-to-consumer space. So Disney launching Disney Plus next year. Warner Media, again with their huge library, launching their own kind of direct-to-consumer offering. So this kind of activity, this kind of behavior is just going to go in one direction, upwards. For an advertiser, for traditional TV, it's becoming much harder to deliver across reach, across frequency. This slide just looking at kind of year-on-year commercial impacts in the UK. Overall, down about 7%. When you look at some audiences, significant drops. 16 to 34s, nearly 20% down. ABC Ones, 10%. House persons with children, down 12%. So the challenge here for traditional advertisers is how do I reach my audience effectively with effective frequency using traditional TV? This is a big challenge. I'm sure many of us in the room are trying to get our heads around this. At Samba, we've looked at this. We've created a product in the USA live right now, coming to the UK this year, looking at reach and frequency across TV and digital. This is an example of a campaign we ran in the US, just looking at overall reach. You can see the slide on the left, or the pie chart on the left. We then broke it down for light, medium, and heavy TV viewers. What we're seeing here is, for the heaviest viewers, great, you're getting them. You're getting lots of reach there. Medium, okay. Light, hardly any. It's very, very challenging. And if you look at frequency, you're likely to be hitting these guys on the right a lot, probably too much. You go over to the far left, probably not enough. So kind of effective reach, effective frequency, a real challenge. And when you look at these kind of growing lighter viewers, that's where the challenge lies. There are various things you can do, but what it's throwing up the question is, do you now need multiple TV plans? Do you need one plan to target heavier viewers, another plan to target the more elusive audiences? Some ways in which you can try and reach some of these more elusive audiences. So there's kind of broadcast VOD, video on demand. Big pluses here, obviously, premium content, viewable, large screen. I guess some of the challenges there are that it's relatively high cost per thousands, and you don't necessarily know that you're getting incrementality with that particular delivery. Connected TV is growing in the US, a real kind of growth area over the USA. In the UK, I'd say a bit more nascent right now. I think some of the challenges there around lots of frequency against the same audiences with a small group of people, and relatively complex to buy right now, but that will certainly grow. Cross-screen digital. Now, this is an interesting area where you can look at getting data from sources, TVs, for example, and then looking to find those audiences, whether it's people who watch particular types of shows, people exposed to your TV commercial, or those unexposed, to try and reach them across digital platforms. And particularly for the younger audiences, this is a strong area to try and connect with these people. Another thing we've looked at Samba is helping people to find their audiences. So we've developed a product called Audience Discovery. Basically here, we're able to map our kind of very large cross-screen viewing panel with first-party data. So it could be CRM data, it could be a client's current customers or lapsed customers, understanding where to find these people on TV and looking at kind of which shows, which channels index more highly for those particular audiences. Another way you could look at this is looking at shows viewed by light TV viewers and understanding what other shows they are watching. So really helping understand where to find these people in a very difficult environment. Going back to my last point earlier about cross-screen, the way we operate this at Samba, we have, as I said, software built into televisions using automatic content recognition technology, understand what content people are watching, what ads they've been exposed to. We could then use our device map to help deliver cross-screen targeting in a persistent manner across these particular audiences. That's hopefully set the scene. I mean, it's fair to say that TV has never been more fragmented at the moment. But with the right data, it's getting better. That's just touched on the surface here. We're going to dig much more deep here with the panel. We're looking at how various people are looking at advanced TV, what they're doing in terms of measuring and planning cross-screen reach and frequency, and how they're measuring business outcomes from TV. So I'm going to skip over here and introduce the panel. Or if I ask them to introduce themselves, in fact. So, morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you could just quickly introduce yourselves, that would be great, and then we'll launch into the panel.
Okay. Apologies if my voice goes this morning. I'm not feeling particularly great. I'm Ruth Cartwright. I'm head of AV at Amplify, which is part of the Dentsu Aegis network.
Hi there, yeah, I'm Alex Bailey, and I head up the advanced advertising team within Publicis Media.
I'm Clive Page. I look after product data and analytics for Finecast, which is Group M's addressable TV play.
Good morning, Dan Ackerman, the Chief Revenue Officer at Samba TV. I look after all of our product across the globe.
And I'm Laurence May from Liberty Global. I run advanced advertising and data initiative with the mother company of Virgin Media in the UK and Telenet in Belgium, Vodafone-Ziggo in Netherlands.
Okay, welcome guys. Thanks for joining us again. Right, I'll start with an easy one, really, hopefully. There's been lots of interest in the term advanced advertising and advanced TV advertising. Could I ask you all to quickly give your summary of what that means to you? Maybe starting with you, Ruth.
Yeah, I suppose advanced TV advertising for us at Dentsu, we've got everything is sort of audience first. We've got a bespoke tool that we use across all of our AV planning, which is called a stack. And we basically use that. I mean, it's market differentiating for us. It's something that actually wins us pitches. Mm-hmm. But it looks at, it originally began as using sort of CCS data, which was like a consumer connected survey. It was an insight tool. And that is then being fused with Barb. It looks at all of the UK broadcasters. It looks at Facebook, YouTube. We pull cinema in as well and take their data and fuse that and calibrate our own data. Mm-hmm. So everything around sort of addressable or audience first marketing and planning is around making sure that we've got the right audience, that we're optimizing versus your TV and your online. But it's making sure that the right person is seeing the right ad at the right time, and regardless of sort of where they're watching that, and you're seeing different ads in the same home, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Sure, yeah, I think we're at an inflection point at the moment in the industry. I think maybe it's my self-contained echo chamber, but I'm seeing a lot more articles and sort of white papers and discussion around this topic, so I think it's really exciting. We know how amazing and powerful TV is as a sort of branding tool, and I think we're starting to see how it can be used through sort of the mid and lower funnels as well. So the way that we see advanced television, advanced advertising in Publicis Media is the application of data and technology across 3 different buckets. So one would be linear, making that more audience-based, addressable television and linear, and finally the third bucket would be OTT and CTV opportunities. And we see what we're building out is a capability with our teams to deliver across sort of planning, execution and measurement of those 3 different buckets.
Okay, thank you. Clive, I mean, Finecast is built around this, really, so it'd be good to get your view on that.
Yeah, so in Finecast, I think the advanced TV advertising, I know there's a lot of sort of index-based buying of TV for different audiences outside of the standard trading model. But I think what we would look to for advanced is really the addressability. So moving away from this broadcast medium where everyone gets the same message to a more sort of narrow cast, dare I say, fine cast message. Yeah.
Great.
So fine cast.
Yeah, that's the. Thanks.
I think the important piece is really creating connective tissue between different ways that consumers get at content or exposed to advertising. So less about the precision within each silo, but starting to break those down so you can understand Ruth's journey from the time she wakes up to the time she goes to bed and all the media she's exposed to, and have a good symbiotic relationship between that. So you're not blasted with overfrequency in one medium and underserved in another. That you give visibility to an agency, to a marketer, to an inventory owner of how to do that in a balanced way to give the consumer a great experience, but also the marketer maximum value and return on their ad spend, so the whole ecosystem benefits from that. I think that's what's really starting to happen now, is that that connection between all of those disparate worlds and environments are starting to come together in a meaningful and manageable way.
Thank you, Dan. Laurence, I mean, as a kind of platform owner, data owner, European kind of business, what's your thoughts around this?
Yes, so we come from a telco perspective, and unlike in the US, we don't have much inventory to sell. We don't have the 2 minutes. But we do have channels to carry and on-demand video to carry. And we have seen that the broadcasters and the on-demand have increased their price because the market has gone down, because advertising has shifted to digital. So we've looked at the way, well, we really need to have a healthy ecosystem. So how can we support the broadcasters and the inventory owners bringing back some of the digital money into the larger video ecosystem? And we looked at, well, what have pushed people to Facebook and Google, really? It's the easy to trade, it's the scale, it's the incremental reach, and it's the data to be able to do addressability. Well, guess what? As a telco, we have a one-to-one relationship to subscribers, and we know exactly who they are. So we want to bring that data back into the system. And we also have immense reach. So just to name a couple of examples, in Telenet we have 75% reach of the Flanders. We've enabled through technology addressability, and our first broadcaster, SBS, is using that technology to bring 7% incremental revenue in 1 year with a 25% incremental EBIT in that same year. So that's new money into a broadcaster. And in the UK, I think you've heard a lot Jamie West say that they've partnered with us, Virgin Media, to increase the reach of addressability and AdSmart in the UK, almost increasing by 35% the potential reach of AdSmart. So that's where I feel, as a technology and operator, we can bring a healthy, addressable ecosystem.
Thank you for that. On addressable, I want to focus on that for a little bit now. So probably a question initially for the kind of the people on the buy side who are over here, really. I mean, in the UK, there's probably one major addressable horse in town. To what extent have you been working with that and looking at other addressable options? And another question is really, are you looking to do more? Do you think there's enough? Or what's holding that back for you guys?
It's interesting what Lauren just said, actually, around sort of making sure that Sky, the sort of potential reach is increased. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
We do a lot of AdSmart already with our clients. I'd say, there are some particular ones that really buy into it. Completely depends on the sort of makeup of that client. Microsoft's, we've got financial clients that are very keen on AdSmart. We'd love to do more of it. It's actually, the scale is an issue. And at the moment, AdSmart, you still have your AV campaigns, and AdSmart is not an add-on. It's much more of a consideration than me just putting it into an add-on box. But if ITV and Channel 4 were doing more, then absolutely we'd be all over that. But it's the scale at the moment. There isn't enough for us to be able to do.
Okay.
That's
I mean, I heard Carolyn McCall yesterday talking about ITV Hub as their kind of offering in that space. So Alex, what's your thoughts around that? And I guess addressable in general for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we do see addressable in two different ways: linear television with Sky Ad Smart and being bolstered next year with Liberty, and that's sort of increasing the footprint, which is great. I think we do absolutely invest in the channel. I think we're one of the largest supporters. We see the huge benefit in doing so, and some of the brands that you talked about that lean forward, like your auto brand, your local, obviously quite obvious. But I think we've even seen brands that you might not expect to sort of step forward. Some food brands, some cosmetic brands, because the data you can get from the sort of club cards and your Experian data sets to really profile audiences. So that's a huge driver. It's not just the smaller segments, but it actually can have an appeal to sort of those larger brands. But looking at the OTT side of the world, so the addressability in IP-delivered content specifically, we're seeing a huge uptake in interest in this world, using the likes of your broadcast inventory, some of the larger sort of non-3 broadcasters making up a lot of it as well, and using sort of first-party data sets as well. So we're starting to see some interest from some brands who might have some smaller budgets who wouldn't go onto television traditionally, who might spend some money on Facebooks, on Googles, who are targeting some fairly refined audiences, maybe some healthcare products, etc. So we're using some first-party data sets and using the OTT delivery mechanism to sort of bring money into television, which is quite exciting.
Are there any particular brands or verticals you're finding more pro this or more challenging?
Do you know?
I mean, there's definitely verticals that are more in favour of, or their business models lean more towards the whole area of addressability. They have multiple messages. They may be more finely geographically split, so are looking to place messages in that way. I think part of the thing that we do in Finecast is we try and educate the market and bring everyone along with us. So what I think the initial question around are there any inhibitors to what we do? I think we're trying to get in front of the market, to try and lead by educating and explaining the opportunity that's available. We try and get in front of all of the technology, because there are various pieces of tech available and various supply sources, and try and be all-encompassing and bring everything into play. And it's a case of bringing everything along. And I think things are just slow. There's a certain amount of inertia in the industry that, although probably demand is in front of supply at the moment, there's various things coming on stream next year that will mean that there'll be a lot of supply in the market, hopefully. So it's a case of being in front of it and having the infrastructure in place to be able to take advantage of all of that.
Okay.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah,
Because
cool.
On education, a year ago on this stage, I claimed that the agencies were not doing enough. And actually, I looked at Jacob Nielsen at the time and I said, it's your fault, you're not doing enough to educate the market. And in this 1 year, Group M in Belgium is our biggest agency for addressable, so thank you. That's the first thing I want to say. And it's the second, it's rare that I say thank you, but. And the second thing I want to say, on the ITV Hub, I think it's a very important point. The broadcasts are becoming platform, but let's not kid ourselves. They're also extremely fragmented. I think Caroline, and I have huge respect for this lady who's doing a brilliant job at ITV. But as a platform, they claim 27 million unique, but really 10 million monthly reach. And I would argue that 10 million monthly reach is probably in the summer when they had Love Island. On addressable at Smart, Virgin plus Liberty combined will be 11 million household, i.e. 18 million unique user, and the daily reach is 95%. So I would argue that I admire the initiative, but I think we still need the scale.
Yeah, it's fair to say. I think there is one big player in town. The others are trying to catch up, but there are challenges. I feel like the UK is quite advanced at addressable. Dan, what's your thoughts beyond these shores?
So, fascinating. I think in the US market is maturing. It's 10 plus years now in set-top box addressability. And it's been an interesting evolution, because early on it was much more focused on advertisers that had niche audiences. It was a complement to linear. And it's now that there's scale, debatable, 25, 40 million, whatever that is, but there's enough scale, enough collaboration amongst the different distributors that the sales have moved to different positioning. It used to be very premium CPMs. The smaller, more niche the audience, the more expensive it was. Yeah. But now they've kind of moved beyond that. They've kind of hit a saturation point. So they're moving into much broader reach targets, into the FMCG, into the pharma categories, and taking the view of, let's look at a national plan and then look within geographies where you're underserved. and then use addressable to fill in those pockets so you have good, even coverage. And now they're actually selling at a significantly lower CPM. Those CPMs are starting to align with what you would buy in the upfronts with the free-to-air broadcasters and with the big cable networks. So it's evolved with market demand and scale, which is great. It means it continues to play a role in its addressability, but starting to serve the market in a very different way. And it'll be interesting to see how it matures here, how you get inventory to scale, where you get a balance of supply and demand, and its use case starts to change. I think also, now that there are streaming services that are ad-supported, there are other options that have that level of addressability. So we're starting to see agencies are taking streaming services like Hulu and others that are virtual MVPDs or delivered through IP rather than set-top box. So that scale is exponentially larger. It's not just relegated to the geographically bound set-top box from the pay TV provider. So it's now is at such scale that it's becoming a very relevant option. So for a marketer, you go into and look at broadcast or cable, that reach can be achieved with that level of addressability. So I'm hoping to see that mature and become a reality across European markets, APAC, LATAM, as these different services start to get real adoption from consumers.
Okay, and sticking with you, Dan, there's a term audience-based buying. So for people not aware of that particular term, it's not kind of buying demographics, which has been done in TV for many, many years. This is using much more granular audiences. So for example, if you're targeting high-end car purchasers rather than ABC1 adults, it will be people in market for a high-end car, right? And then trying to overlay that onto a linear schedule to pick the spots, the channels that index more highly for that. So just kind of finding concentrations of that. Feels to me like that's quite advanced in the US compared to the UK.
Well, listen, I think if you talk to anyone in an agency, they've always done that. There's always been a lot more data and thinking. It's just the currency that they transact on gets simplified to age, gender. I think what's happening now is that buyers and sellers are coming to the table and trying to make a decision. Do I want to transact on that? So if I'm doing purchasing for General Motors, I have a very distinct and data-driven persona of the consumer that I want to reach to buy each particular vehicle. But when I come to the table with an inventory owner, you transact on a simplified currency on age and gender. Now the option could be, do I want to transact on that very targeted audience definition? And what's happening in the US now is I'm willing to make that currency. And you started to see some of the broadcasters willing to make guarantees on delivery against a very fine niche-defined target, or even starting to move to looking at guaranteeing on outcomes, and whether that's purchase or some sort of action that can be quantified beyond just did I deliver GRPs or impressions against a broad demographic. It's going to be interesting in the balance, because that becomes exponentially more difficult to manage inventory and optimize to each one of these very finely defined audiences. So I think that over the next 2-3 years, we'll start to define the viability of that process. And the agencies have to also be willing to let some of their secrets out of what inventory is really most valuable to them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some challenges around that for the UK at the moment. We're confined really with what we can trade, and you've got 12 demographics roughly, and with TV, but we've long had, and every agency will have their different approach, but ultimately we've always looked at different audiences that is the proper core target audience for our clients to make it work much harder. So you would then overlay that on a plan and look at the right program, the right channel, the right time frame, whatever that might be. But there is another challenge, but we want to do more of that and be more transparent around that. But you're still ultimately tied to what you're audited against and procurement and clients and what they expect. Yeah. So you might have 100 house person and kid GRPs, but actually you're buying something completely different. When it comes to audit and how that is then sort of benchmarked and you're marked, you're still going back to those 12 demographics. It's quite difficult. It's difficult to move away from that. And I'm not sure how long that will take to do. That needs to be back to the education piece, not just agencies, but clients as well. Definitely something for next year. It's a challenge.
The education is an important piece, and as you can imagine, on addressable, on the linear, on the set-top box, you can't really do age and gender because it's a household level. So that means that we have to sell everything else. And just to claim, the Sky claims from yesterday, they now sell on 4,500 segmentation capabilities. Whether all the brands want a choice in there, or I think they need to be educated. That's the first thing. There's also the ability in addressability, and we see that more and more also in Belgium, to match first-party data. So isn't that the optimal when the client actually want to target specific people, and we can actually match at a household level? So those are the kind of things we do. So it's beyond age and gender, it's family composition, it's location-based, and it's still wealth and ability to spend. So those are still the three biggest segments, but they're not age and gender, and everything else, and then first-party data match.
I mean, do we think that the advances in addressability has almost meant that audience-based buying hasn't, it's almost been stepped over to some extent because you can transact on an addressable basis? Clive, I mean, this is what your business is doing.
But I think they're complementary. I think just to pick up on Dan's point and the question around the US market and the differences in the way that the TV is traded, I think all of the use cases that were talked about in the US, are employed today within the UK. So, if there's a shortfall against a particular demo in linear, we will target those in addressable. That type of taking the linear base and then adding to it with addressable. So, the light viewer is the other one where, the VOD viewing market and the addressable TV market is much more attuned to light viewers. Mm-hmm. We're looking at maximising the reach and optimising the reach of campaigns using addressable. So I think all of these different use cases are still applied, and they are complementary to the audience-based buying that you see across the normal linear TV.
Okay, going back to my presentation, talking about kind of cross-screen reach and frequency and some of the challenges we're facing there. Alex, I mean, how are you guys looking to work in that space, planning across different screens, measuring across different screens? What approaches, what data are you using for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the holy grail, isn't it? Having a beautiful understanding of the whole marketplace from linear, addressable, and the OTT world. So, I think we're all sort of struggling to get to that place. Like we said, we have a tool within Publicis Media that's a planning-based tool. It's using BARB data, some ComScore data, and we're also using IPA touchpoints as the hook, as well as the anchor to fuse those data sets together. So we're able to look at audiences from a channel, from a supplier, and an audience base to look at how efficiently you can reach those across all screens. Mm-hmm. That's a starting point for us, yeah.
Okay, Ruth, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, as I touched on before, actually, our stack that we use, and I'd say 90% of our clients would use that, and it went from an insight tool that is a panel of 17,000 that is bespoke to Dentsu. We then overlay sort of the insights. We look at not just the sort of linear TV providers, but also the Facebooks, the Googles, the YouTubes. So it's actually something that's really robust. It definitely, you look at sort of behavioural, lifestyle, attitudinal sort of insights into that. And it gives us a really good idea of not just the split between linear and online, but where we should be spending the client's money. And looking at it from a programme channel, what have they watched at 7 o'clock and then gone on, and we know where we can swap and follow that across a whole schedule, which is really valuable to clients.
Okay. Dan, I mean, obviously I presented some stuff that we're doing in the States over there. How?
Yeah, it's not limited to the geography of the US. Our data set is global, so we are capturing every bit of video that's displayed on an internet-connected television, so regardless of source, which really does start to unpack how a household is being exposed. So not just the set-top box, not just what's coming through a Roku, an Apple TV, any source that lands on the television. And that there's a lot of black holes and areas that just don't have any light on them that are very difficult to surface in any of these agency platforms or at the client level without having that deep level of understanding of what's being viewed. So yeah, it's definitely a big challenge for large television advertisers. I think Laurent's referenced earlier, overall live viewership is plateauing and is slight decline because of the different options. But for large advertisers like Tide, a big laundry detergent that everybody that has clothes and $1 in their pocket is a target, it becomes increasingly difficult to lean on those previous buying patterns of just using television. So we've done a lot of interesting work about starting to look within these over-the-top environments, connected TV and digital, to be able to provide the insight to balance that. And some environments you can't optimize Buying in the US is slightly different. You have much more upfront commitment, so less flexibility. But if you have that insight, you can start to leverage your different creative assets in different platforms to make the relationship with the consumer significantly better. You may not need the same volume of ads. You may be able to redirect investments into different platforms. And without that, there's the stakes are big. It's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars could be misappropriated and start to do kind of negative impact on the brand if they're not used properly. So definitely the demand from these proprietary agency platforms and even at brands, which I think is the biggest trend, is starting to take control of that data and that understanding internally so they can have a more informed relationship with their agency to make those decisions.
Sorry, Lawrence, Karen.
If I get on the data, I get a bit excited, actually. Yeah. I'm a bit biased. I used to work for, I co-founded TVB, which is a cross-platform measurement system, and part, actually, of a great initiative by MTM and ECTA, which is bringing standardization, especially with a UK focus, but European as well, standardization of measurement cross-screen. And I think we need to kind of embrace those initiatives, because at the end of the day, we don't want to have multi-currency and people so confused as to how they're going to be measured and paid for. So I'm very supportive of that. But I also believe that the data has a lot to say, and we internally at Liberty Global, we use data. We have a couple of broadcasters, actually. I said we didn't, but we do have Virgin Media TV in Ireland and SBS in Belgium. And as a broadcaster, they also have a lot of advertising because they promote their shows a lot, and promotion is really the one thing that people don't measure really well, and it's normally a little sauce, and then you put it a bit there with how you feel, you might convert, but actually with the return path data, you can actually follow the viewers, and you talked about where can we see where people went. Well, actually, you can. So those are the kind of initiatives. So on one hand, supporting the standardization, but on the other hand, also using the data to make TV more efficient within itself.
Okay, thank you. Connected TV is really taking off in the USA in particular. In the UK, I feel like it's not quite at that level yet. Clive, I think you guys obviously work in that space quite extensively. What's your thoughts about that and the direction it's heading in?
Again, I'd dispute whether or not the UK is a sort of a laggard in connected TV.
That's fine. I want to dispute on the stage.
Again, so we try and pull together all of the addressable inventory across the UK in terms of Finecast in the UK, and predominantly most of that is with broadcasters, so the BVOD as we call it. And if we look at that, if we look at the supply that we're getting that is addressable, much more of that is on the connected TV and big screen. Finecast is born out of the notion that we want the big screen. It's the 55-inch LED in the corner of the room, and what we're seeing is more and more of the supply is coming through on that from the different broadcasters. And I think that's a change they're all recognising. People are realising it's much more easy to connect and much better to watch premium, episodic, long-form content on a big screen. And I think so. The supply is then showing that through to us.
Is there much in kind of long-tail CTV that you're seeing? So beyond the
long-tail CTV,
I guess, yeah.
Yes and no. There's lots of, as the name might suggest, there's a long tail. In terms of the volume, it's very small. I think, the vast majority of what is actually watched is still the PBS and the main broadcasters.
Yeah. I think in the UK, obviously, you've got the broadcasters who've been working for many years on this registration profile. So 27 million users for ITV, 14, 16 for C4. So those signals start giving you the ability to refine audiences, whether it's down to the individual levels and really bespoke, or just actually tightening up on the board demos. It's something that's really exciting for us. I don't think there is that bushy mid-tail of inventory. We'd like to think there is, or we're all working towards finding those players and suppliers. I think that Roku coming to the market will help with that. But yeah, within the UK, maybe we're quite privileged with the fact that lots of the content is curated within those sort of 3 or 4 big groups.
I think the most interesting in that space is just where the content's going and the accessibility from an advertiser perspective. I think there was some news yesterday that Netflix plunked down $100 million for Friends, which hasn't had a new episode in I think 14 years. So that the money that's being thrown at that content, but coming into environments that you can't advertise in, and the amount of originals that Netflix and Amazon are now producing in dozens of different countries, So time spent on the television is increasing. It's just, as you referenced earlier, that fragmentation away from. Now, in the UK, there's still a lot of the premium content is developed from the free-to-air broadcasters, so there isn't that imbalance. But continually more options at cheaper access points. You're going to spend more time in environments that are difficult to advertise in. So I think the data and understanding, which is missed by a lot of other data sets, traditional panels, set-top box, and different sources of that becomes, I think, a significant blind spot. And it's a behavioral attribute. What you watch in Netflix is as important to me, in my opinion, as where you go, what you buy, the things that you do, on sites you visit on the internet. So that, in my opinion, will become an increasingly more important factor into deciding the persona of a target consumer to reach with advertising.
But it's not because they're watching Netflix that you can retarget them on other devices. And I think that's what you do, which is
just one of the things that we do.
Ability to follow where the users are on connected TV. And if they consume a lot of apps, they're consuming apps. You might not know what they're watching, but they consume apps. And then if you add that data from the connected TV with your device graph, you can then retarget. So I think even though some apps do not sell advertising yet, the ability for the consumer to be targeted still exists.
That's right, yeah. And also upstream in planning, how that becomes data that's valuable even in targeting ad-supported programming. It rounds out the picture of that consumer. So you go back to something on ITV or Channel 4, knowing what those consumers are doing outside those environments is an important behavioral attribute.
Because I guess if it's like, the light TV viewer may be really heavy Netflix and TV viewer, but they're light ad exposed.
Yeah, traditional TV, I guess. I'm going to take a breather here and ask the panelists if they have any questions for any of the other panelists. Fire away, anyone.
Well, just one thing that we haven't talked a lot about, data, the focus seems to be very blinders on around targeting, but often not referred to as it relates to creative, which in these addressable environments becomes, I think, a challenge, but also a great opportunity for advertisers. Now that you've got a very engaged audience, they fit all of the criteria for being a target, what you put in front of them becomes exponentially more important. You don't have the benefit of doing something that's kind of creative that's for everybody. If you have that moment, you have a big responsibility to put the right creative in front of them. So we've been doing a lot of work about trying to understand what creative resonates in the right environments to help guide when you get that addressable moment. It's expensive and it's a big responsibility that you have the right data behind the creative. TV's tough because it's not cheap to do creative and to do lots of different versions, but just interesting in I'd like to know how you're guiding your clients with this addressability. What's the creative conversation look like?
I think most of the time, actually, our clients are still, and I would say this is sort of reflective of the whole market, most of our clients will use their TV copy across multiple sort of different format, and it's, you have that education piece about what is the right time length, tailoring that message, but there are, financial implications to that, and there's only a sort of a small amount of clients that can have the budget to create sort of multiple different copies for different people. I think it will come if they're starting to spend on ad smart and a more addressable approach. Yes, that is definitely a consideration. We're saying, you've got to tailor it. It's got to be the right message, right time, etc. But there is still that sort of latent cost attached at the moment, I think. So it's quite difficult. It's definitely another challenge.
Yeah, I think so. We're looking at building out, and we are building out some tools that optimize around different creatives at the moment. So understanding, sometimes that's on television, sometimes in digital environments first, and then putting that onto the big screen. So when you get opportunity that is expensive, you're making sure that you've got the right message. But you're right, having the money to actually go and create, and also the timely effect as well, to be able to adapt is something that's really difficult to get around.
I think most agencies now would have an in-house facility as well, that they're able to sort of at a lower cost or a more efficient cost help create multiple different versions of a copy.
I think the same is true of what I was saying about it's an education. I think the broadcasters coming through with supply, the agencies coming through with demand. I think the bit that is a little adrift is the creative versioning and bringing that on. I know the AdSmart guys were sort of avant-garde in terms of pushing out and getting the creative agencies to think multiple copies, multiple versions. I think that's still not fully landed, and I think also just I know Clearcast as well are very keen to promote this as a function within TV, but it's not quite there. I think it just needs, you know, a bit more of a push. It needs to be brought on a little bit more.
I agree on the education piece. I think it may be costly to produce multiple creative, but it's not that costly to test, because if you do an addressable campaign, you just send a copy to one A/B test and then the other to the other B, and that's not more costly in terms of CPM.
You bring up a great point, which is the big payoff is that you get better return.
Yeah.
How have you started to change your thinking around measuring the effectiveness and doing those cost-benefit comparisons to previous buying and then...
Does Dan get 2 questions then?
Sorry. If given the opportunity, I will ask that.
He's my boss, so yeah.
Guess what he wants.
I mean, that was my next point, actually, around measuring effectiveness anyway. I mean, TV is, you know, has been typically about reach, getting the right eyeballs. Some big brands use econometrics to understand how it's driving outcomes. You know, beyond that, what are you guys seeing in terms of measuring business outcomes?
Econometrics, I think you'd be the same, wouldn't you? Also, sort of, market mix modelling. Within Dentsu, we've got a company called D2D, so they will work with clients and look at that ROI, which is the most efficient across all of that media mix. But yeah, that's what we're using at the moment. Clients' data as well, obviously.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the predominant way of measuring still is KPI reach, and that will be true for quite a long time, with dips of economic modelling. Starting to work towards your attribution, your full MTA device, return path, having user IDs, understanding of that. Complications around the GDPR obviously make that a lot more difficult now, but there are some clients who are leaning forward and trying to understand how that full works. But if you look at any study about attribution, TV doesn't even come on the graph. There's like email marketing at the top, and TV doesn't even come onto this. So it is something that's really difficult to achieve across the screens.
If you can sample, but for those of you who were not in the room yesterday, there was a competition for the best startup in our ecosystem, the future of TV advertising, of the year. And out of 20 entries, we selected 5. And out of the 5, there were 3 attribution measurement companies. And they were, bright, young scientists, data, who just thought that TV was not measuring enough and the impact of TV. And all of them had the same message, which is they're proving to digital advertisers that TV works, and that it's not just about brand, it's also about performance. And I thought it was a very interesting point, that there's this emergence of startup. Actually, the winner was Admo TV and is an attribution company.
I think we're now at a scale, just referring back to scale of addressable in the UK, we're now at a scale we're actually seeing significant results within econometrics. I think up until this point it's very difficult because you're that thin sliver on top of your linear buying. So we're now at a scale where we're seeing that, but we're also employing lots of other techniques to be able to prove effectiveness and attribution. So the addressability, the geo-region addressability. So a lot of footfall studies around. If you advertise here but not here, what's the footfall? We also do creative versioning testing. There's a very good case study we have with an airline. We've done creative versioning testing in geographic areas that shows uptick of people actually buying flights. So these are things that, because again, part of the education piece is actually having the material to go into market and go, this is what it is, this is how it works, and this is how effective it is. So we're definitely pushing that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point on the econometric about scale. I think until quite recently, the modelling hasn't been able to pull out the effectiveness of BVOD. So now that you can run a campaign, sometimes wholly on broadcast VOD and not on linear, you can start to actually pick out some data points that actually show the value of TV Plus or exclusive to BVOD, which we've known for a long time that the TV works on the digital screen as well, but now those proof points are really starting to come through and clients understand that as well.
Dan, what are you seeing in other markets around attribution, measuring effectiveness?
Yeah, similar demand. Alex, you made the point about that reach and frequency are still important as these new environments come online. So especially the big TV advertisers in every market is trying to understand the incrementality of these new environments. Is it just additional frequency to the same people? So I think one of the basic filters is looking at the distinction of heavy, medium, and light TV viewers. So that behavior and how they're being exposed, and using that as one proof point is to prove out incrementality, that there are reaching more difficult to reach audiences or delivering frequency to that target audience. So that seems to be common across every region, every market. But there is built a very large business in the US around conversion. So different, upper to mid or lower funnel conversion points. And to Laurence's point, like television is probably underweighted in its credit towards driving those results. So I think helping to validate what exposure to TV is doing to drive to site visitation, to footfall, any of those often gets credited to last click. So down to search, down to digital, overweighted in its credit. And we were talking before we came in here, we do quite a bit of work with the likes of Facebook and Google and Amazon. And as a lot of those companies are out in market talking about shift TV dollars to our medium, their budgets in linear have gone up exponentially over the last 3 years. I think last first quarter in the US, FANG represented something like 25% of total spend. Super Bowl, all of the big tentpole events in traditional television, which is always ironic, but I think exciting to prove out the validity and the credibility that television still drives more response, both upper and lower funnel, than really any other medium.
A good point. It is very ironic, in fact.
Yeah, I think on that one there also, that so in the UK, the Sky doing a great job as well, looking at the whole of market attribution as well. So they've got quite a few long-term studies that are being played out to really demonstrate the value of linear and addressable television, how that all comes together. When clients are able to sort of share that sort of sales ethos data back with Sky, they're able to, with registration data, subscriber data, they can be able to map that back and understand everything from the testing. So yeah, that's a great thing we have in the UK as well.
Cool. We have about 2.5 minutes left. Any questions from the audience? We've got a couple of mics at the back, if you want to put your hands up. Come on, we've got a great panel here. You must have a question. Okay, in which case I'll ask my last one. I mean, where do you see advanced TV, moving in the next few years? And if you think about some of the bigger digital players and potentially moving into this space, and the Amazons and Netflix and so on, what's your predictions, for the next 2-3 years in this space? Lawrence?
I think TV is going to grow again, as in total TV. And that kind of like slowdown erosion we started seeing thanks to addressability across screen. As a whole, I see TV going up again over the next 5 years, which I think is quite exciting.
I would hope and echo that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think there's been a real sort of the past 2 or 3 years, it's been very much, the whole TV is dead type thing. And actually we all know that isn't the case, but we need to, particularly in the UK, probably in other territories, address that issue with clients. And we have a battle. We've got a battle with the Facebooks and the Googles, but it's something that I think that we can, in a full media mix, we complement each other. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
But you can't get away from the fact that TV is that reach deliverer. It's the premium content. Most clients will still use that. So I would hope to see a growth of TV again.
Alex, what's in your crystal ball?
Yeah, then sort of two things. I do think we'll see actually growth in the audience targeting piece with bigger data sets out there. So we can start mapping back to Barb and really understanding linear TV beyond just the demos. So really pinning down that. That's a big, huge growth area for us in the UK. Also, I'd like to see some of the free-to-air broadcasts or Freeview and understanding how that can really work in the addressable world. If we're talking about that C4 Live TV may not be part of Sky Ad Smart anytime soon, it's understanding the other distribution platforms really and how they can start to work in this space.
Yeah, I think next, even 12, 18 months, I think there's discussion around the golden age of TV. I think that there's going to be a bit of a gold rush towards addressability. I think, various things will come on stream. Liberty and Virgin, we talked about, Freeview, YouView, all these platforms are all working towards it. All the broadcasters understand that, it's an essential part of their media advertising mix. And I think, things will catch up. Barb, the presentation yesterday, Doug was saying that the campaign measurement will come in next year through Barb for all platforms. So I think, suddenly at the end of next year, we could be in a very different place.
Okay, Dan, final words.
We've run out of time, so I'll make it quick. I echo what these folks have said, but I think the focus on measurement and quantifying return on ad spend in a more uniform fashion across all of these different platforms, including television, will be a key theme in every global ad market in 19 and 20.
Great, thank you very much, everyone.
Can I thank the audience for coming that early?
I will.
8:30 turn up. I think well done, guys.
And if we could thank our panelists. Give them a round of applause.